Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Late Show. This is your host, Young Brando from Los Angeles. We're live. We're live to talk watches. And I have some news for you um, as well, which is related to a lot of what's been going on in the world again. And let's see if we can do something again, just like we did for Syria and Turkey, for the children in Syria and Turkey. Morocco has been hit by an earthquake, and right after, Libya has been dealing with floods. So, as it happens, I actually have one more of these Seiko 5 Rowing Blazer 2022 collab watches, the one with the blue dial. Thankfully, I put it aside. I was about to send it away, but I kept it, and I knew it would be useful for something, and it can be useful for this. I'll put the official announcement up on the channel, on the community tab soon. But those of you who are familiar with the process probably already know everyone will get a number. Everyone who puts either the first or the last super chat of the day will get a number for the raffle, which will be drawn exactly in a month. So I will do the drawing. Let's see, what do we have here? I'll do the drawing on the 12th of October, and we'll take care of it from then on. I'll talk more about it a little later, but just so you know, it begins today. The first and last super chat qualifies for the raffle, which gives you a number, which will be drawn on a live stream with the Google random number generator on October 12th. And that commits, by the way, not only the first and last, but all the super chats between September 12th and October 12th are going to go to UNICEF for the children of Morocco and Libya. So let's keep this going. Let's get this started. I'll try to keep it on watches, and you know how it goes. I had the chance. Oh yeah, so it's this watch that I still have. That's my personal one as well, but I have an additional one that has been untouched and that I got the minutes they were released, basically. Um, so I will raffle this for the month, for the next 30 days, with the first and last chat, last super chat of every live stream gaining a number for the raffle. And within that period, every single super chat will go to the UNICEF for earmarked for the children of Morocco and Libya. So the last week, I had a chance, as you guys know, as some of you would know, to visit the preview for the Only Watch charity auction, the logistics of which are handled by Christies. So they were nice enough to include Los Angeles slash Beverly Hills as a stop in their world tour. I have been able to see basically every single lot, get some shots of a lot of my personal favorites as well, which I keep posting one by one. And at the end, after I post all the videos, I think I will do a full video where I go through every single watch, trying to talk a little bit about what I like about them and what excites me about those particular watches. Um, I have to say, a lot of the watches that I was not impressed by or that I didn't quite understand when I simply looked at the lots on the website really came alive. Others left me unimpressed. Yet others, I was even more uh, reviled by them. But this belongs to the very first category, uh, the Ifejo chronomètre bleu furtif. This was a watch that I liked as a concept and that I liked uh, when I saw it as a lot listed on the website, but it looks and feels incredible in person. It is a watch that they executed entirely in tantalum in the style of their Line Sport series. So with a, a kind of integrated bracelet look, with what is largely tonneau shaped case with a round bezel and dial. In this case, the tantalum is largely sandblasted with mirror polished details on the uh, case, on the bezel and the case, and with polished chamfers on the bracelet. And as you can see, that mirror polished clasp that carries the signature of the brand. The concept is furtivité, right? Stealth. So the dial is executed accordingly. Grand Feu blue enamel dial with laser etched matte Arabic numerals, matte blue finished hands for the hour and minutes, and the case back actually sunk into the 18 karat pink gold bridge plates of the movement. Also includes a power reserve indicator and a moon phase indicator. I'll post that video later. I wanted to use this as a reel because for whatever reason, when you post more than one video, it doesn't qualify as a reel, whatever that means. I don't really know, but I wanted to use this to give my platform a little bit of an exposure. This watch kind of reminds me as a concept of the Bulgari Octofinissimo, but in reverse. So, in the sense that the Octofinissimo is a big design, it's a large watch, but so fine, ultra thin, ultra sleek, sits very close to the wrist, and especially in titanium, feels like second skin. Whereas here, you have a watch that is fairly large, although smaller than the average Line Sport collection watch, because this is 42 millimeters in diameter and 9.5 millimeters in thickness. But because of the tantalum material of the case and the bracelets, the watch feels like $1,000,000. It's pretty heavy. And that also is accentuated by the fact that you have this lithe, very supple, uh, beautifully designed bracelet. It's really a great piece of design, and it really plays with that tension between uh, the subtle gesture and the grand statement, between the lightness of its design and the weight of its material. Um, and it does have a new movement inside, but as I mentioned, the newness of the movement mostly consists in how it integrates into this stealth mode in terms of giving some secret um, space for the power reserve indicator and the moon phase indicator, which are again beautifully mounted or sunk into the bridge plates of the movement that's executed in 18 carats pink gold. I really love the orange hand for the sweep center seconds because it feels like a watch that could otherwise perhaps be a little too severe, a watch that takes itself a little too seriously. And I think that orange accent works beautifully against the blue backgrounds. Um, there's a lot of light in this space, right? The video didn't come out too bad, could have been worse, but actually in some lighting conditions the watch lives up to, I should say, its secretive, stealthy, uh, under the radar philosophy, and those numbers and even the hands are in certain lighting conditions again quite hard to make out. So there would be instances where you would mostly see that orange seconds hand, which I think is actually kind of cool, right? You know, time passes by, but you can't always quite make it out. And anyone who can make it out is the wearer who can get it to the right angle, whether that's full frontal or what. But of course, it's easier to see from that direct full frontal angle rather than any other way. I really like this watch. I didn't expect to like it so much. Um, I'm sure it's will appear in production in some way, probably not in this form, certainly not exactly in this form, because this is supposed to be a pièce unique. This is supposed to be a one of a kind watch exclusively for this charity auction. Um, but there's precedence in terms of Ifejo's participation into Only Watch, whether it was the Tourbillon or the Astronomique and many other watches that they first designed for the Only Watch, and then in some shape or form integrated into their production line. So I'm very excited about this particular piece. I know it will break the internet when it comes into production, and I look forward to that day. Even though we will talk about Ifejo in a little um, second, uh, because there are a few interesting news or developments, let's say, from the auction circuit. The other watch that that sticks to perhaps the category which I fell in love with the minute I saw it, and I loved it even more in person, and that is the Tag Heuer Monaco split seconds for Only Watch 2023, or Monaco Rattrapante. This caught me off guard when I first saw it because it makes so much sense. Um, Yet, this is the first time in history that the Monaco case actually houses a split second chronograph, which is very surprising, of course, being one of the iconic chronograph wristwatch designs, being the first self-winding waterproof case, i.e., being the first real deal sports chronograph. It would make sense that the Monaco would somehow be iterated as a split seconds chronograph, but apparently this is the very first time, and what a time it is. Beautiful open work dial in a classic Monaco case made in marble titanium, which has this urban camel feel. Fire red accents are beautiful on the dial, and those are actually polished titanium bridges on which the two chronograph counters are suspended with the 30-minute totalizer at 3 o'clock and the continuous running seconds at 9 o'clock. There's a kind of gesture towards the first iterations of the Monaco, since the self-winding pieces were had their crown at 9 o'clock. So here at 9 o'clock, you have actually uh, the pusher to engage the split seconds, or rather the pusher to split the two chronograph seconds hands. So that can be considered as a tip of the hat to the late 60s, a throwback to those original aesthetics of the Monaco. Look, I really like this watch because, in a way, it lives up both to the legacy of classic Heuer chronographs in terms of its complication, but it also lives up to the first part of the tag Heuer name, namely technique d'avant-garde. Uh, this is something truly path breaking, truly pioneering. Um, the details are also so beautifully executed. If you look at it, the theme for this year's auctions at Only Watch was kind of all colors of the rainbow. A lot of brands took that a little too literally, took that a little too seriously, and put it all over the face of their watches. Tag took it upon themselves to integrate it into the watch, but did that in the most subtle way possible. It's just an accent on that open worked oscillating weight that itself puts the Tag Heuer logo in sharp relief for the most part. I love the fact that the bridge plates actually have a finish that echoes the checkered flag. What better way to honor the racing, the motorsports legacy of the chronograph? And if you take seriously your exhibition case backs, that is a sapphire crystal that makes the entire case back. So you get to see as much as the movement from various angles as possible. Of course, there are those two column wheels for each chronograph. One here, one there. I think this is really an incredible piece. That glass box concept that they used in the new Carrera, uh, I guess, can be likened to this. But imagine that beautiful crystal, basically as the entire case back. And when you have a movement like that, I guess it's best to show off as much of it as possible. Again, this is one of the watches that I expect to see in some shape or form in series as part of Tag Heuer's lineup sooner than later. I do expect to see Monaco split seconds chronograph. Um, I don't know if it will come in titanium. I don't know if it will come in stainless steel. I certainly don't expect it to come with an open work dial, but something that is reasonably priced, I would certainly be in line to get it. I don't know if it would be necessarily a hit, but I somehow think it would be. People love chronographs. People love split second chronographs, especially as an additional complication. After all, we use the chronograph really to play around at this point in time. So uh, the more layers to that play, the better, obviously. The other watch that I really liked, and I had liked this watch again when I first saw it announced. It was, in fact, the first three favorites that I picked out of the entire lot, uh, because I was really stunned, really surprised, but also excited by the fact that of all brands, Fula Marie chose to go all the way with a prestige complication that you would have a hard time seeing in the catalogs of most prestigious brands. This piece is a secular perpetual calendar executed entirely in silver, which is rhodium plated. Both the case and the mesh bracelet, which sits beautifully flush with the case and the lugs. This adds enormous heft to the watch, kind of a sporty feel in terms of its aesthetics, but certainly the tactile and haptic impression of a precious metal watch. It is sterling silver after all. There's an aura to this watch. Again, I don't know whether it's that quasi-integrated look. I don't know if it's the rhodium-plated silver. I don't know if it's the titanium dial that seems to organically extend outside to form a singular connector, corrector, I mean, with which you can adjust the entire complication. I don't know if it's the legibility, the subtleness of the open working that shows you as much of the caliber as you would need. I think it's a very significant watch because Fula Marie's initial foray into the industry was with heavily vintage inspired chronographs, basically tasti tondi clones that were driven by hybrids, i.e., mecha quartz movements. They have, for this particular piece, decided to collaborate with Julien Tixier and Dominique Renault. And Dominique Renault, you might actually know as one of the founders with Gillo Papi of the Complications Workshop, Renault et Papi, which is today integrated into Audemars Piguet, AP, RP, and which has produced a lot of the high complications in the past for IWC, of course, for AP and Richard Mille as well. And the secular perpetual calendar is a kind of complication that you rarely find among the offerings of any brand, really. The last time I came across it was an Anderson Genève piece. And, you know, the story we always tell about the perpetual calendar, which is hypothetical, really, because these watches, mechanical watches, do need service, do need to be taken care of. But technically speaking, a perpetual calendar, once it is properly set and wound, does not need an adjustment until the next century, right? And the reason it would need an adjustment in the next century is because it would not know about what are called these centurial non-leap years, right? The 2000, 2200, 23,000, basically years that by our usual counting should be leap years, but are actually not. Of course, a perpetual calendar counting to one, counting from 1, 2, 3, 4 can account for leap years, but it cannot account for those centurial non-leap years, which a secular perpetual calendar actually does, um, which in turn, of course, means that a secular perpetual calendar like Fula Marie's only watch could actually, uh, well, theoretically, be correct for the next 4 centuries. I think from a design perspective, this watch is very exciting because it represents a refreshingly dynamic take on a noble and exceedingly rare complication. It's an eye-catching piece, whether it is put on a leather strap, which is how it's represented or how it's presented on the website, or um, it is fitted onto this proprietary Milanese style bracelet, and that is actually the creation of Laurent uh, Joyer, who is a specialist jeweler for these kinds of parts. The piece, as I mentioned, is incredibly legible. It has these 2 subdials, one of which actually exposes the Maltese cross mechanism that takes care of the year. But when you look at the dial, it's incredibly easy to make it out. You have the month on the periphery of the dial, a two-tone dial on that silver track. You have the month indicated with a red-tipped hand at 9 o'clock. You have a blue hand that indicates the day of the week, again on a silver subdial, and on the right at 3 o'clock, you have another blued hand that shows the date. And again, what I really like about this watch is it is also a tiding for good things to come for the brand, because they are planning to introduce more complicated mechanical watches after the three-hander into their lineup. So stay tuned for Fula Marie perpetual calendar. It might not be a secular perpetual calendar, but they will probably introduce a perpetual calendar also into their lineup. And I can't attest to this. I don't want to take responsibility for this, but I heard it will be at a very accessible price point for the complication. So stay tuned for that. Hey, Van Lux, JB, and Sam. Ciao, man. It's nice to see you all. Um, I was just taking the time to introduce some of these fascinating watches that I saw. And of course, for me, the star of the show was the new Jarajanta watch, the first one made by La Fabrique du Temps under the premises of Louis Vuitton. It's a minute repeater, so let's listen to the sound. they have kind of gone all the way and combined all the possible elements that would make it recognizable as a Jarajanta piece. First of all, they used an octagonal case design that uh, was an archival design never realized until now, a sketch of Jarajanta that is revived for today, a kind of architectural multi-layered design, stepped lugs, stepped bezel, mirror polished on the surfaces, grain brushed case band and sides of the lugs, which give the watch a nice measure of contrast. In the 90s, where the Jarajanta brand was going through its purple patch, in the early 90s, I should say, and perhaps in the late 80s as well, they were very famous, as you know, for their chiming watches. So this is a chiming watch. It's a minute repeater that you can activate through the double crown, through the second crown at 9 o'clock. So it pays homage to the legendary chiming watches of the Jarajanta brand. And finally, it's uh, it's also a minute. It's also a jump hour retrograde minutes piece, which was again a very popular and accessible genre of Jarajanta watches in um, through a lot of their existence. Finally, also they made it a Mickey Mouse watch, which, for better or worse, is somehow um, etched onto people's minds as being spectacularly a Janta signature. I have to say the dial is incredible in terms of its detail. Um, an off-white background, a beautiful chanlevé enamel execution, meaning that it has all these inlays that bring to life um, the that Mickey Mouse drawing, that celebratory Mickey Mouse drawing that is itself, of course, achieved through numerous um, measures of fire baking in the oven. It's really a beautiful, beautiful work. Uh, the kind of work that you would expect them to put into a one of a kind watch, but hopefully it will at least be represented in some measure in other watches. They will certainly introduce as part of the revival of the brand. Um, the anti-glare coating, Captain Kirk. I don't know if they have it or not. Maybe not double, because a lot of modern watches have anti-glare or anti-reflective coating on the crystals inside and out. This might just have one layer, but believe me, it's an exceptionally bad environment actually to get any visuals, because auction houses are perhaps even worse than the average watch store, because the environment is really set to be as clinical, as exposed, as lit as possible, for mostly paintings to be hung on the wall. um, it's not an environment that is lit or prepared for the fine appreciation of wristwatches. In person, it's okay, could be better, but when you take videos without any professional equipment and just on the fly with, pardon me, my old iPhone, this is the best you get. So it might not be the lack of anti-reflective coating, although I'm sure, like you said, it's probably one layer. I assume there's some anti-reflective coating on that crystal, but I don't think it's double-sided. Those were the four watches that I had a chance to post already. There's much more to come, and I will be keeping you up to date. I wanted to share an interesting piece of news, and it was our very own Saint Peter who wanted me to talk about this. As you guys know, earlier this year, uh, Christie's actually had an auction dedicated to the art of Ifejo, and it was a very special event. The first time that a major auction house actually had an entire auction dedicated to a single living watchmaker, and it consisted of 40 lots, some of them very special, all of them quite rare and hardly obtainable otherwise. And the results that were reached were mostly mind blowing. Um, and I don't know if any of you paid attention to it, but Francois Paul Jean's engagement with the auction was minimal. It was somewhat lukewarm. If you have listened to some of the interviews that he gave around that time, it was in fact something he dreaded. He pointed out that they helped with the preparation of the catalog and the writing of the lot essays to make sure that nothing uh, fallacious or slightly misleading would come out, but they didn't actively participate in the evening, which is very surprising because such an occasion must be an otherwise an immense honor for a living watchmaker who also has uh, every pretension, but certainly also a very legitimate claim to be called an artist. Um, and I'm saying this mostly as an outsider, right? I'm not a collector of Ifejo. I don't own a single watch by them. They are not my favorite brand by a long shot. But I think there is something very special about what Ifejo does. However, I've also always said that the prices on the secondary markets are extremely, excessively, unbearably overhyped. And I suspect that Ifejo's own discomfort of participating in this auction had a similar reasoning behind it. I think he is well aware that uh, he's well aware of the inert horological value of his watches, but he's also quite conscious that the prices that they sell for on the secondary market are largely unconscionable. And if it starts gaining the characteristics of a bubble, it's bound to burst ultimately. And he doesn't want a potential future event like that, of a bubble bursting specifically, to affect the value of his brand, the public perception of his brand. Of course, we like to think a lot of times that um, we have a very simplistic understanding of the secondary market of watches. I think that is sometimes due to the personal participation of some of the collectors um, in that market, right? A lot of them buy most of their watches at retail and then sell to these gray markets dealers those same watches. They used to do that at a small loss. Increasingly, of course, that became a better and more lucrative situation for the average collector. um, so the idea is, we get watches, we give them to gray market dealers, and the gray market dealers pass them on to some other collectors, and it's a very organic process. At the end of the that process, some watches gain value, some lose, etc. But of course, things are much more complicated than that, and there are actors, especially corporate actors, bigger gray market dealers, um, from the luxury bazaars of this world to the watch boxes of these worlds, that actually have very conscious and concerted strategies of driving up the value of certain brands. And that usually consists in just buying up every single serviceable, passable example of an undervalued brand, um, getting them serviced, refreshed, and rehauled if necessary, and then selling them as part of your inventory, or listing them as part of your inventory. Now, Watchbox took things up to the next level with both De Béthune and FB Jaune over the last few years, especially after the pandemic. And they have been buying up all kinds of examples of FB Jaune watches at ridiculously high prices. Um, and they played a big part, a very important part, in driving up the markets in FB Jaune, in Alang und Söhne, and also in De Béthune, which is now a brand they actually own as part of their group, as part of their holdings. Well, I'm hearing now uh, in from the grapevine that they're actually not doing that anymore, that they're not as eager to overpay for every single relatively rare and decent example of an Alain Gonzone watch or an FB Jaune watch, which means that the exorbitant pricing of these pieces on the secondary market are actually coming down in a serious way. And if you needed an example of that, in Eichen recently had a curated auction, a timed auction based out of Zurich. And I believe it was an online exclusive of 14 pieces, 14 lots, one of which actually was withdrawn. As you can see, lot 11, but of the remaining 13 lots that have actually made it to the auction, that have actually made it to the end, which was September 4th, 3 p.m. by Central European time, only 4 of them sold. The others did not sell because the reserve prices were not met. And I believe those reserve prices were largely set, taking into account the previously sensible, quote unquote, secondary market valuations of these pieces. So let's start with this example of chronomètre résonance, for instance. Lot number 1. Pink gold movement, Résonance Nouveau, the second generation with caliber 1499 2.2. Champagne dial, pink gold case, pink gold movement, matching tang buckle, starting bid of 112,150 in US dollars. There was a fixed price that bordered on $250,000 in US dollars. There were 10 bids going all the way up to 162,600 for lot 1, but it did not sell because it did not meet the reserve price. Such was also the fate of lot number 2, which is T30. This, as you know, is Ifejo's homage to himself on the 30th anniversary of the first watch that he made, of the first watch that carried his proper name on the dial, a pocket watch that he made limited series, a two-tone case executed in sterling silver and pink gold, hinged case back that gives a beautiful exhibition of the brass movement. Again, this is one of those rare occasions where a brass movement was used in an Ifejo watch after the transition. Since François Bourgeon decided to reproduce that first tourbillon pocket watch that he built as faithfully as he could in 99 examples of a wristwatch. He also used brass movements as a rare exception with traditional gilding and frosted finish. With the caliber 1412, slightly smaller version of the movement. That forgoes the détente escapement, which is usually preserved for pocket watches, in favor of a uh, lever escapement. Let me see if I can find you a nice image, a tourbillon movement, because it's truly breathtaking, and it's very hard to understand why their listing might not include it, because it's just yeah, it's incredible with that, brass bridges, gilded, with a frosted finish, with oversized blued screws. I mean, look at this. Look at the finishing of that tourbillon bridge. Anyway, um, the T30, number 93 of 99 examples, honoring in 2013 that first pocket watch that François Porjon made. Unique two-tone execution in silver and 18 karat pink gold. A very faithful reproduction of the pocket watch, down to all the details. Very similar aesthetics, of course, to his influences in Breguet, especially. This piece had a fixed price of 560,650 in US dollars. It's attracted again almost 24 bids, and it was bid up to $398,050, but it did not sell because the reserve price was even higher. Again, you start seeing a theme, right? But you remember throughout uh, my coverage of the auction circuit on this channel, uh, quite consistently for the last year, um, and even longer, you might say maybe for 14, 15 months. A lot of it, as you know, coincides with the market crash. Even though the trend we observed was a downward trend for basically every single watch, every single brand imaginable, even the hype watches like Nautilus, like Aquanaut, like the Royal Oak, they had all lost significant amounts of value from the heights, from the staggering, record-breaking prices they had achieved before March 2022 until now. And Ifejo watches were an exception. Um, and it seems even Ifejo is kind of losing that exceptional status. The ones that sold still sell well over retail in this auction, but the unrealistic, extremely optimistic prices, uh, reserve prices that were set for some, um, were simply not realized. I mean, here you look at the Octa Calendrier, which is a brass movement version, as you can see, rhodium plated brass movements with circular Geneva waves as a finish, off center, full gold rotor with the barley corn decoration, 38 millimeter platinum case, white gold dial, off center, hour, minutes, and seconds in Ifejo's execution of the annual calendar complication. 2 wickets for the day of the week at 10 o'clock and the month at 8 o'clock. And you have a scale for the date in the form of a crescent that faces the crown. And the date is indicated on that scale with a retrograde hand that snaps back to 1 to the 1st at the beginning of each month. And this piece, similarly, was perhaps a little optimistically priced, with the buy it now option set at around almost $250,000, $250,000 in US dollars. The piece attracted exactly a dozen offers. The highest one was 179,400 in US dollars, but it did not sell because the reserve was set even higher. This is another watch that didn't sell, the first 3 lots, in fact. This time, a pre-2004, a brass movement, Ifejo Octa Calendrier, Jean's take on the annual calendar with a self-winding movement in a 38 millimeter platinum case. Finally, a watch that sold at number 4. This is likewise an Octa Calendrier, but a later example. Pink gold with the pink gold movement. White gold dial. Heat blue hands. Annual calendar. Lot number 4. Ifejo Octa Calendrier in a 40 millimeter pink gold case with the pink gold movement. Lot 4 sold for 105,400 in US dollars. I mean, still, right? It's a pretty solid price. Well over retail. But no longer 2, 3 times more. No longer retail times 2 or 3, right? I think the retail should be around 70,000, maybe. Hey, Artie. How are you? Another watch that actually sold was an Octa Lune in a 40 in a 38 millimeter platinum case with a pink gold movement, with its original box and certificate of authenticity, self-winding with the off-center dial, big date, power reserve indicator, and the moon phase indicator. Lot 5, beautiful piece that sold for 96,450 in US dollars. Lot 6 was another piece that actually sold, although again, well under the estimates. This was an Elegant 40 in Titanite. This is Ifejo's unusual take on a watch with a quartz movement. A quartz movement that not only has an extended battery life, but also the ability to hibernate itself when the watch is left alone while still keeping time, while still keeping the record of time, so that it sets itself back once it's picked up. That's the unique approach of FP to quartz movements, to a quartz movement watch in the Elegant with the caliber 1210. And this piece actually received about 8 bids and found a hammer price at $30,300 at lot number 6. And it basically came as a full package, as you can see. That was a decent deal, I have to say. Chronomètre Bleu sold at lot 7. Again, for a very healthy price, I must say, even though it's not as mind-blowing as it had become, or as tear-inducing, I should perhaps say. This is a watch that is surprisingly minimalistic. It even dispenses with the power reserve indicator in the chronomètre Souverain, the other entry-level watch by Ifejo. It replaces the classic choice between the platinum case and a pink gold case with a 39 millimeter, with a tantalum case, 39 millimeters in diameter, and has that ink blue two-tone, ink blue dial that has over time gained itself a lot of fans. Hour, minutes, and small seconds on an off-center dial. Chronometric caliber 1304, executed in 18 karat pink gold. Signed as Corner Bleu Souverain on the main plates as well. And this particular piece sold a little above the lower end of its estimate at 85,250 in US dollars. And remember, Ifejo has completely eliminated buyer's premiums, so that hammer price is actually exactly what the buyer ended up paying to them. That was lot 7, one of the 4 watches that actually sold. There was another elegant Titanite or Titanite at lot 8. That was actually the smaller case size, if I'm not mistaken. No, I think this is a 40 as well. Another full set. This one actually did not sell. Attracting 21 offers, the highest one being 56,100 in US dollars, but it did not sell. Thank you, JB. JB, you are number 1. You are number 1. Well deserved as well. Entering the raffle. Please hit the like button, by the way, everybody. It helps a great deal, as you know. Guys, as I mentioned earlier in the chat, and I will put this up as an announcement on the community tab as well on the channel. I have one more Seiko 5 Rowing Blazers watch with the blue dial, just like the one I have for myself, but this one is untouched, unopened, and I'm going to give it away in the raffle that is going to take place from now until October 12th. And the procedure is the same. The first and last super chats of every live stream get entered into the raffle. And since we don't seem to see an end to disasters, I decided to do something good with it again. Every single super chat in that period from September 12th, which is today, to October 12th, is going to be donated to the UNICEF. I will do a live stream right after October 12th for a live drawing from the Google random number generator. And at the end of that live stream, I will also donate, I'll also make live a donation to UNICEF with the entire amount of super chats from today until October 12th. So for now, we have $10 in the pot, basically $9.99. JB says, I love how the font size changes all the way around to go unnoticed on lot number 7. Chronomètre bleu. Yes. Look, I mean, you can say all sorts of shit about Ifejo watches. I know a lot of their pieces are acquired taste. Some people find their designs a little dated in a purposeful manner, a little bit too contrived in trying to look a certain way. That is particularly an objection lodged towards the off-center dial designs, which is not necessarily the case with Chronomètre Bleu or Chronomètre Souverain, or for that matter, for example, the stainless steel Chronomètre Holland and Holland one either. These actually largely are very classically designed with, however, an off-center subsidiary dial for the seconds. And as you notice, rather than doing cutouts numerals where the off-center subdial for the seconds takes its place, they decided to shrink those numbers. So you have a super small number 7 because the subdial is basically between number 7 and 8, but leaning on number 7. And again, shrunk number 8, which is slightly larger than number 7, but still smaller relative to number 9 and every other Arabic numeral that is radially placed around our track with a railroad track on the periphery of the dial reserved for the minutes. I don't know. I love the Chronomètre Souverain design. Chronomètre Bleu is basically a more simplified version of that with the elimination, with the absence, with the subtraction of the power reserve indicator. I love the design. I think, again, the prices on the secondary markets are unconscionable, and I would much rather get a pink gold chronomètre Souverain with an Havana dial, or a platinum chronomètre Souverain with the silvered opaline white dial. But there's no doubt this is a beautiful, beautiful watch, and well thought out, actually designed. It's a cool piece. Hey Fries, how are you doing, man? Mr. French Fries Monster. Unlike our Belgian friend who lives and works in Geneva, Mr. French Fries Monster is a Frenchman living in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. But welcome, welcome. And I want to say Bavaria specifically. Man, I have a very good friend who is Bavarian, and I know how proud they are. I know how proud he is, and I know how Bavarians uh, have that sort of pride about their region specifically. Yeah, Tourbillon Souverain, another piece that did not sell. Again, not so much of a surprise, I guess. As you can see, the fixed price was set at $459,700 for this Tourbillon Souverain with the remontoir d'égalité, the constant force mechanism from 2003 in 38 millimeter platinum case. As you can see, rhodium plated brass movements. Very subtle, beautiful watch. That gorgeous white gold dial with that frosted, austere finish. The tourbillon itself establishing an equilibrium visually, but also symbolically, with the off-center dial for hour and minutes as well. The power reserve indicator has a fan-like scale that finds its place right in between those two dials. And the remontoir also finding some exposure. This piece again at lot number 9 was one of the pieces that did not sell, having attracted a total of 32 bids, the highest being 386,850 in US dollars. On that note, I will quickly grab a drink. Please enjoy looking at this beautiful Tourbillon Souverain from 2003 by Ifejo. Yes. French fries with mayo. That's our Belgian friend who works in Geneva. This time we have a little longer to go, I think, Mr. French Fries Monster, but please enjoy as much as you can. And don't forget to hit the like button. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Thank you for your patience, guys. Um, we were talking about the world of Ifejo auction, which was an online curation by Ineichen Zurich, where they had 14 lots, one of which was withdrawn, and only four of them was sold. We were looking at it as a kind of cannery in the coal mine, so to speak. Don't take me wrong, the four watches that sold still present good results, still sold well over retail or well over the last known retail price of these watches in most instances. I think the Elegant that sold actually sold for a reasonable price. But a lot of the pieces, some of which are very unique and desirable, and that's the case with lot number 9 that you're looking at here, the Tourbillon Souverain from 2003 with the brass movement. Um, the exorbitant reserve prices were not hit, were not triggered by still very exorbitant highest bids, which was in this case, for example, $386,850. So again, not to say that the interest in Jean watches have subsided. I think they are still the exception in the market, but even that exception started its own downturn. So things are not getting better. Things are certainly not stabilizing, or whatever nonsense that the gray market profiteers and their YouTube platforms for hire are telling us and telling you. The prices are still going down. You will always be better served by arming yourself with knowledge, remaining patient, and catching the knife as it continues to fall, because the prices are going to continue this downward trend for quite a while yet. So let's look at another F. piece that did not sell here, which is one of my absolute favorites. This is a black label version of the Octa chronograph in platinum. A brass movement piece. Look at those beautiful downturned lugs. They caught it at a very good profile. I love this case shape, I have to admit. I think, sorry, I was wrong to say that it's black label. I think it's simply one of those gold dials. I don't know if you can say simply, but anyway, so Octa chronograph was the chronograph model that preceded the Centigraph, which is decidedly more contemporary, decidedly sportier in its design. Octa chronograph was, in fact, quite uh, decidedly contrarian and antiquated, with the knurled roping on the crowns, with the centrally deployed chronograph seconds hand and off-center dial, harkening back to old school pocket watch design, big date indicator at around 11 o'clock, and continuous running seconds, again, attached in relative terms at around 9 o'clock of the dial. As you can see, that principle of not cutting off but shrinking numbers is continued here. The off-center dial for hour and minutes is shrunk at 9 o'clock because the chronograph seconds hand is centrally deployed here. The continuous running seconds is on a subdial at 6 o'clock, small seconds, and then there's a 60-minute totalizer at 9 o'clock right there as an additional slightly oversized subdial. This chronograph is also one second, I'm sorry. Also a flyback chronograph. So in fact, just like what I'm wearing today, in my Breguet Type 20 reference 3800, you could in fact just with the pressing of a single button restart the chronograph instead of stop, reset, and start. It's a little more complicated, French fries. I know what you mean, but with brands like Jean, the investors also included global capital and their very own corporate gray market dealers like the Watchbox, which was snapping up every single example of an FB Jean watch for exorbitant prices on the secondary market because they were counting on selling it for even more. And they stopped paying as much premium for FB Jean watches. So it's not only that the watch investor type has disappeared, it's not only that most flippers have given up, it's also these kinds of corporate speculators and manipulators that include many of these gray market profiteers. They don't have enough capital, and they don't have any more capital to inject into the market to manipulate it anymore. So you are gonna see even the most hyped watches that I've ever hyped on a downward trend from now on. And we have been seeing that, but Jean was an exception. But it seems even this brand is finally seeing its downward trajectory as well. So Octachronograph is one of my favorites, not only because it has the flyback function, but also because of its decidedly dated design. It's one of my favorites. Unfortunately, it's discontinued, and when it comes on the market, it's extremely expensive, like this one, which had a buy it now option set at 313,950 with the reserve not met, 18 bids, the highest being 269,010, $100. Oh my God! Imagine. I mean, it broke 250,000, but that wasn't enough to set off the reserve. People are crazy. But I guess, I mean, I don't guess. I know that these watches were selling for those exorbitant amounts just a few months ago. So it's not unrealistic to expect them to still sell that way, but I guess that ship has sailed, that train has left the station. Number 11 is another piece that did not sell. Oops, sorry, that was what we were looking at. Number 11 is gone. That's the lot that was withdrawn. Number 13, sorry, number 12 is one of my favorites, very limited production. As you guys know, this is the Octa UTC, which is kind of Ifejo's take on the world timer with its unique painted globe subdial. This was a model that stayed in production, I think, for a handful of years. Um, I want to say, damn, maybe 5 years. Okay, 7 years between 2011 and 2018. It has a sapphire disc, which is a laser engraved and painted world map right around that 8 o'clock. Which you can set for your reference time. In addition to the heat blued hands for the hour and minutes, the main dial also has an abbreviated, a micro hand in gold for 24 hours. And of course, you also have the proprietary power reserve indicator that is at 9 o'clock. At 11 o'clock, you have the oversized date, beautiful 40 millimeter platinum case, white gold dial. The caliber entirely executed in 18 carats pink gold. I guess I shouldn't say entirely, but you know what I mean. Base plates, bridge plates, and the um, oscillating weight, of course, the off-center rotor, winding rotor is also executed in pink gold, the base plates and the bridge plates in 18 carats, and the rotor weight in 22 carats. Once again, you have a full set with a special pin for the corrector. This piece had a fixed price of 145,800 in US dollars. It received 18 bids, the highest of which was 107,650, which did not actually hit the reserve. Captain Kirk says, I think Ifejo's designs can be interesting, but doesn't the real attraction and value come from making every component himself? At least that's my impression. You mean in-house, I guess, right? That in the sense that Ifejo has les boîtiers de Genève, their own case maker, les quatronnières de Genève, which is the dial maker that has, at least in the past, also made dials for Vacheron Constantin, but it is mostly dedicated to Ifejo, so on and so forth. Chanel, as you know, has a significant stake in Ifejo, but they don't mess with it whatsoever, at least not at this point. They simply inject the capital and let François Paul do his own thing. But certainly with the resources they have, not to mention the global network of high rolling collectors, Ifejo is not hurting for anything, and they certainly can source most of everything in house. Yeah, there's that apocryphal story even of François Pajon investing in huge chunks of gold when he was making that transition from rhodium plated brass movements into pink gold movements. So I'm sure some of that is myth, right? Even Rolex's mythology of vertical integration and 100% in-house production is too good to be true. There are minor exceptions here and there, always. I'm pretty sure that Ifejo produces most of everything in their own facilities. Right. We were looking at the Octa UTC at lot 12, which did not sell, with the buy it now price fixed at 145,800, and the hammer price not actually triggering the reserve. And the highest bid at the time was 107,650 in US dollars. This is another watch that didn't sell. The last two watches, which also didn't sell, includes an Octa in platinum and a chronograph Rattrapante from the Line Sports series. Lot 13, Ifejo Octa platinum. This is again an early piece with the 38 millimeter case, which houses a rhodium plated brass movement, platinum case, white gold dial, and rhodium plated brass movements with the off-center self-winding rotor in 22 karat gold with a nice barley corn pattern decoration on it. This piece had a fixed price of 134,550. It received about 15 bids, but lot 13 actually did not meet its reserve price, and the highest bid was 89,700 in US dollars. Last but not least, the chronograph Rattrapante split-second chronograph with two registers a 30-minute totalizer at 3 o'clock and continuous running seconds at 9 o'clock. Both partially open worked, both of those subdials. The line sport design with that supple bracelet integrated into the 44 millimeter case. Grade 5 titanium, both with that matte sandblasted finish. As you guys know, Line Sport is a series of watches that highlights that lightness. So even though there's not a good look at the movement here, you should know that it is an aluminum alloy, which really makes the watch super light. Rattrapante, of course, means that this is a split-second chronograph with the split function integrated into the crown, if I'm not mistaken, and a big date indicator at 6 o'clock. Please hit the like button, by the way. Hey, there we go. Fries with mayo. My Belgian friend from Geneva. You know, there's a competition for the fries spot, but I've given you first place, fries with mayo, because you're my first follower with fries related nickname. So your number one, Mr. French Fries Monster, is inevitably number two. So we were talking about the world of Ifejo auction that ended on September 1st at Inaichen Zurich, timed auction, online only, with their classic no buyers premium method. 14 lots, one of which were withdrawn and 9 of which did not sell, largely because of exorbitant reserve prices. But I also consider it a sign of the times, because it indicates the downward trajectory that even the exception to the market crash seems to have now fallen in. The fixed price for this split-second chronograph from Ifejo's Line Sport series had been fixed at 168,200 in US dollars. The piece attracted about 16 bids, the highest of which was 117,750 in US dollars, but that was not enough to trigger the reserve price. That was not enough to reach the reserve price. So this titanium sports chronograph on its integrated bracelets with the anthracite gray dial, hand wound aluminum alloy movement, this piece did not sell either. It was a full set too, as you can see right here. So all this goes to show again that's what they called a correction and what I insisted in calling a market crash already back in March, April of 2022, continues unabated. Um, it affected not only minor brands, not only some of the less desirable models by some of the hottest brands, but also even hype watches like the Nautilus, like the Royal Oak, like the Aquanauts. Some of these watches lost up to 40% of value from the heights they had reached at the highest point of the markets back in 2022, back in early 2022. Ifejo was largely an exception, especially in the auction circuits. I think from the watches that have still sold, even in this auction, they have realized still pretty strong, pretty solid, pretty respectable price points. So it's not like the bubble has burst just yet, but even the pricing and the buying and selling of F. pieces seems to be now caught within the conditions of the new normal, which indicates that watch prices on the secondary markets are continuing to fall. And I believe they're going to continue on that downward trajectory well into 2024 as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Mr. French Fries Monster. Ah, merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, cher ami. I try my best. J'essaie. And I know you are particularly sensitive to people butchering French, which, you know, honestly, I think you should give up because if you're watching any YouTube videos, um, you'll be in a world of pain. I mean, it's yeah, people just don't bother. You know, some don't know better. Others they just don't care. I remember listening to this lecture by a French philosopher, um, Jean-Luc Nancy, and he was giving the lecture in English. And this is kind of like the opposite phenomenon, right? Because he was giving this lecture in English, he was trying to be extra careful to pronounce everything in English, right? So he was talking about psychoanalysis, and suddenly he said, "How do you say Freud in English?" And someone from the audience said Freud, and he said, "But how is that possible? That's how you say it in German." So, you know, again, the French have a very particular way of pronouncing everything. The Americans too, and the particular American way of pronouncing anything is just not bothering to do it correctly at all because you think you are better than everyone else, right? So you just don't bother. You just say F.B. Jorn, what else? Daniel Roth, Breguet, Longuet. What else do we have? Um, Throw me something. Blank pain. What else? I don't know. You write, I will pronounce it in the most obnoxious American way possible. 548 Vikings. Hey man, nice to see you. I have a 12600 pink dial OP. I'm very happy with it. Oh, I mean, Oyster Perpetuals are great watches, especially if you can get them at at retail. I know for a fact that Ms. Aussie expat got that same watch. Oh yeah, J J LaCoultre, JJ LaCoultre, JLC. Just say JLC. It's fine. Um, a few, a few, Captain Kirk. We're still trying to keep a low profile. We're still trying. I will retire soon, so then all bets are off. I might actually reveal um, who I really am. But yeah, 548 Vikings. I think that's a watch that our very own Aussie expat holds in his collection as well by proxy. This is the 12600 pink dial. I believe yours is the previous generation, but still the 36 millimeter. But in either case, yeah, I love uh, OP in terms of what it's traditionally represented. Don't take me wrong, I don't necessarily hate the kind of attention that these more original, unique colors brought onto the line, but they have kind of ruined OP as an entry point into the brand at retail, right? They are scarcely available now, especially in those interesting colors, and it kind of screwed the pooch for everyone else who could care less really about having hype colors. They just want some simple time only three-hander with reasonably sporty look, an all-rounder, an everyday watch, waterproof, so on and so forth. The OP checks a lot of boxes and offers a lot of interesting options. And I think even today at retail, as long as you are not stuck with getting the 41 in a very specific color, I think you can still get a lot of interesting options. The blue dial, it's great. In the black sunburst, it's just fine. I really like it in green. I don't mind it in silver, honestly. I'm kind of, I understand it's good for legibility, but I kind of don't like the gilt accents on what is otherwise a beautifully monochromatic watch. But anyways, the OP36 is a great entry point into the brand. Uh I mean, again, I guess you can say Jäger Le Coultre, but the French have their own way of pronouncing German names as well. So I guess it would be Gégé Le Coultre, Gégé Le Coultre, something like that. Yeah. No, no, it's okay, man. I don't take it. I don't take it the wrong way. I just don't like giving out personal information so freely. Um, I like talking about watches. Let's talk about anything and anyone else than me. Trust me, I'm not necessarily the most interesting man in the world. So I did promise that we would talk about Sotheby's fine watches today, and we have about 2 hours to dedicate on that. This is a full auction based in London that is going to take place on September 21st. So next week on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of interesting watches, about 104 pieces, 104 lots. We're going to do it our usual way. I'm going to post the link. If you have any um, particular requests, you can send me the lot number with a super chat and I would focus on that. Remember, every super chat from today until October 12th in its full amount is going to be donated to the UNICEF for the children affected by the earthquake in Morocco and the flood in Libya. And also, I am giving away another one of those beautiful Seiko 5 Rowing Blazers 2022 collaboration watches, the one with the blue dial, the last one I have remaining. Um, I'm going to post the entire rules on the community tab, but you should know that the first and last super chats on every live stream from now until October 12th are going to be entered into the raffle. JB is the first entry now, Jake Brooks, with his 9.99 super chats. Um, if you want to support the channel, therefore, the memberships remain the most pertinent right now, the YouTube memberships. Don't let yours expire. That's a great way to support the channel, and you get access to all kinds of exclusive content. So let's start with lot one, which is an exquisite example of a reference 18038 yellow gold Rolex day dates on presidential bracelets with a wooden dial, with a burl wood dial. This is the single quick set 5-digit Rolex day dates. Single quick set means that you can actually, through the crown, correct the dates. With the 18238 reference, you actually get the first quick set. So that's a favorite of the channel. That's my sweet spot for getting a day date that has the vintage charm, vintage appeal, that offers the best bang for your buck, but that also allows you a lot of convenience in terms of your daily use, because you get the double quick set, which means that you can correct both the day and the date from the crown. Once again, this is 18038. So a single quick set, which means you can only reset the date from the crown. This piece has one of those beautiful wooden dials, burl wood, the kind of thing you see usually in watch boxes and not in watch faces. But that's, of course, the most captivating detail about vintage Rolex day dates and date justs as well. Those rare and sometimes unique dials And semi-precious stone and wooden dials are by definition unique, by definition singular, because no slice, no cross section uh, w- of stone or of a wooden plank would be the same, exactly the same as another. So you get that extra benefit as well. I think this is a beautiful, beautiful way of entering um, the collectible markets when it comes to the day dates. I will present my usual caveats beyond, how we look at auctions all the time. Of course, you should study as much and as hard as you can. Of course, you should usually bid on auctions where you can take a look at the watches in person, where you can see them on exhibits, on location, or when they travel with the watches. Um, if not, you should try to arrange some sort of viewing, whether by sending someone on your behalf or minimally arranging something with the auction house. I'm sure you can have a Zoom meeting or something, worst case scenario, but the best way is, of course, seeing the watches on your own, because it's always tricky to assess the condition of watches, even when you have a detailed condition report and decent pictures. And sometimes in auctions, even those are quite hard to come by. Now, when it comes to day dates in particular, I'm always an advocate of, when it comes to vintage day dates, I'm always an advocate of getting the best case, best shaped bracelets, the exact reference number you want, the best example you can pay for. Don't get stuck with a dial. Get what you want first, get it in the best condition possible, get it for a good deal, and then hunt for the dial separately. Because as it happens, a lot of these watches are presented naked, anyways. For the most part, there's no way of knowing what kind of dial these watches were born with. Um, Most of the time, there's no way of telling that. And it's just not worth paying the kind of premium that some of these pieces go for on public auction when they have really unique dials. So if you really want a bloodstone dial on a day date, unless you have just FU money and you don't care what you pay on an auction, I would highly recommend you get the watch first in the best condition possible and then hunt for the dial, because I don't know what kind of money it costs at this point to get some of those rare dials on auction, or rare dial day dates on auction, because sometimes they command just unconscionable premiums. Anyways, this one has an 14,992, 22,485 USD. Um, the starting bid will be the lower end of that estimate, 14,990, which is right under the reserve, I'm assuming. That's lot one for a Rolex day dates yellow gold on a matching presidential bracelet, reference 1803, with a burl wood dial from late 70s. Number two is the thumbnail of this live stream. Please hit the like button. I'll be right back. You're looking for the titanium Yachtmaster. Carlos Alcaraz was wearing it apparently during the U.S. Open. He was photographed courtside and in some of the press conferences apparently with it. I'll be right back. Let me get some water. So we're looking at the 5270P, the Patek Philippe perpetual calendar chronograph with the in-house movements in the modern 41 millimeter case in platinum, of course, here. And in that enticing combination of white metal and the pink gold salmon dial, you know where it's quote unquote originates. It was the popular combination for Eric Clapton, which he used in his 3970 G, in his special order 3970G. And I believe the 5270P with the salmon dial was most certainly influenced by that. For my taste, the 5270 is a little too large. You know, again, that's just me. But I really love the spider lugs, the step design, the concave bezel. It's really a lovely piece with some modern lines and certainly contemporary sizing for a Patek perpetual calendar chronograph. Arabic numerals in the upper half of the dial, feuille hands, leaf shaped hands, with, in addition to, of course, the two chronograph registers, the pointer date, which encircles the moon phase indicator, and the two wickets at 12 o'clock above the signature for the day of the week and the month. You also have two porthole style windows, one at 4:30 for the indication of leap year, and one at 7:30, which serves as a day-night indicator. This particular piece is from 2019. Comes with its original box and papers, as well as the product literature, the leather bifold wallet, and the outer packaging for the case as well. 5270 was introduced in 2011 and replaced the 5970. 5970, as you know, was the last generation of Perpcal chronos, perpetual calendar chronographs by Patek Philippe, that were still built on the Lemania 2310 base, the Lemania CH27 base. This um, perpetual calendar chronograph actually is powered by the in-house caliber CH29 535 PSQ. Thank you, 548 Vikings. Unless someone else gives another super chat before the closing of the program, you therefore have a chance to be entered to the raffle. And you know that these $2 are going to the UNICEF. So good on you. You said one more opinion on the pink OP. Well, it's Barbie season. Even Gucci Mane just released a Barbie themed album. There we go. It's it's the color of the season, man. See, Barbie with the ice cream cone tattoo. By the way, that was the best era of Gucci Mane with the Bart Simpson chain. The ice cream cone tattoo on his face because he was the coldest MC in town. Um, it's great. It's great. He's amazing. But yes, so the point being, pink is the color of the season. I think that kind of soft pink that Rolex uses for the OP is actually beautifully unisex. It's like a pink Oxford cloth shirt with a button down color. It's something that men should wear with ease, with a kind of nonchalance that makes you stylish. I think it's a beautiful watch. Um, Obviously, you know, it can make for a great feminine piece as well because it's an OP 36, but I think the 36 millimeter in Oyster Perpetual and in Datejust, actually with the particular shape of the Oyster case, wears slightly larger than what that might indicate. Those are not necessarily small watches. But if you have any particular questions, please don't hesitate to ask more. But my vote is an absolute yes to any OP period that you can get at retail. Vintage OP, absolutely. Don't be intimidated by 34 millimeter sizing for some of the older stuff that still wears well, unless you are a veritable giant. There's room for smaller watches in everyone's watch box, I think. Smaller dress watches have their occasion. I'm not necessarily their biggest advocate. You know, I have no skin in that game. Honestly, I don't, you know, I'm not obsessed with small watches for the sake of it. Um, but I think just about anyone has room for something smaller, something more slender, something more elegant, something more classic in their wardrobe. the OP checks a lot of boxes. It's no dates, no small seconds, no anything. It's just a three-hander. It's as plain and as simple as it gets. It's as a dress watch should be, but you get so much more because you get the oyster case, which is, of course, recognizably sporty, but most importantly, waterproof. This is the caliber CH29 535 PSQ, the in-house perpetual calendar chronograph movement that superseded the Nouvelle Lemania base that powered many generations of Patek Philippe chronographs and perpetual calendar chronographs, not to mention the Omega Moonwatch that had at its beating heart Omega 321, which is Lemania 2320 by another name. This is, of course, lot number 2 of the upcoming Sotheby's Fine Watches auction based in London. It's going to happen on September 21st. And this piece has a pre-auction estimate of roughly 124,919 to 249,883 in US dollars. Of course, the original amounts are in pound sterling, but I used their easy conversion here since we are mostly Americans in the audience. But, if you guys prefer pounds or euro, please let me know. I have no problem just noting those. Number 3 is an absolute hype piece, the Paris Crash from the 91 limited edition. It's a unique case designed by in collaboration between Jean-Jacques Cartier and Rupert Emerson. Of course, there is a surrealist inspiration behind the design, even though it's not a one-to-one clone to Dali's famous melting clocks, for example, as depicted in The Persistence of Memory. There's also an apocryphal story of Cartier baignoire allongé, which supposedly melted in fire, having been involved in a car crash. That story, I think, is absolutely made up. But as with a lot of interesting stories, it has such a compelling narrative structure and such a romantic and kind of effective attachment to it that I absolutely love it. Of course, ultimately, it was a design achieved by Rupert Emerson in collaboration with Jean-Jacques Cartier, first produced in Cartier London. This is from a limited edition in 1991 out of Paris. The piece has the unique deformed case here executed in yellow gold The Paris crash of the 90s was had a slightly smaller case than the original London version. It was a run of 400 pieces in yellow gold. It has the inscription Paris on the dial, which of course identifies this particular limited edition in its specificity, but it also has a certain charm, you might say. Cartier watches signed with Paris on the dial, pardon me, have a certain attraction for some Cartier collectors. That silvered white dial with elongated, stylized Roman numerals, secret Cartier signature at 7 o'clock, heat blued stainless steel hands in the sword or épée style, and a sapphire cabochon on the beaded crown. A very, very classic watch indeed. And it is low key a hype watch of the 2020s. I don't know about that story of the baignoire allongé that caught fire, but the crash certainly has caught fire. And the estimated value of this piece at lot 3 reflects that, between 124,900 to almost $250,000 in US dollars. This is the Cartier Paris crash from the 400-piece limited edition in yellow gold from 1991. Number 4 is another interesting single quick set Rolex day dates, 36 millimeters, of course, from that generation on the presidential bracelet, and with the ever so desirable royal insignia of the Sultanate of Oman, the khanjar, the crossed swords or the crossed daggers that symbolize the Sultanate of Oman. Classic champagne or like lemon champagne dial, yellow gold case, fluted bezel. The watch has Rolex service papers, apparently. I believe that explains the stickers on the case band. Those are service stickers. I guess after it was serviced, whenever that was, the watch hasn't been worn. And it looks to be in a pretty good condition as well, admittedly, with the hallmarks quite legible and fully intact. This is the 18038 yellow gold Rolex day dates on the matching presidential bracelets from around 1983, single quick set with the Omani Khanjar at 6 o'clock, red against the background of a champagne dial. This is lot 4 with the pre-auction estimates roughly between 25,000 to 50,000 US dollars. 548 Vikings, Glashütte CQ date opinion. I like the CQ. That's Glashütte's diver. You mean the version with the big date, right? The panorama date, as they call it. I like that one better, honestly. Again, I'm not man enough to wear such big watches because I believe the panorama date version of the CQ is a larger watch compared to the classic version of the CQ at 43.20 millimeters in diameter. I love the design of this watch. Classic skin diver vibes. I like that exaggerated minute hand with the arrow tip. Um, the slightly oversized Arabic numerals that alternate with baton markers. And of course, the oversized dates is my favorite expression. I would always, you know, if possible, no date is my preference, but because I'm hard headed like that, it doesn't mean that is somehow universally better. It is simply my preference, but I'm usually charmed by a big date indicator. I love it on my Gégé Lecoutre reverser grand date. I love it when I see it on Alan Gonzuna watches, and I kind of like this off-center placement of an oversized date window on Glashütte Original's vintage-styled diver. Um, I think I would look into this if I didn't have such puny wrists. Um, of course, the first dive watch, the first sports watch I would get if I had bigger wrists would be the Roger Dubuis Easy Diver with possibly with the Flying Tourbillon. That's probably one of the best deals in the entire market, but that's a 48 millimeter watch. I cannot possibly wear that. But even at 43.2, it's stretching it for me a little bit, but that's just me. Um, the retail price seems a little high to me always, and that's because I'm simply still stuck in that old school mindset of um, just buy the Rolex. Um, but from another perspective, those prices mean exactly what they mean on the secondary market. This is the kind of watch you would get on the secondary market. Let someone else eat that initial loss. Be patient, wait for the right deal on the secondary market, and I think you would be very happy with this watch. Um, the CQ is a great line, don't take me wrong. But aesthetically speaking, I like the panorama dates just infinitely better. I think the other uh, iteration of it just leaves something to be desired. There's nothing wrong with it. Don't take me wrong, and it's better sized if you want, for me at least, at 39.5. But it's just there's something missing, or there's something more, right? If they just had a standard baton marker there, if this were a no date watch, I think it would be a much better alternative to the panorama dates. But as the model line currently stands, I much prefer the panorama dates, the one with the big dates. placed off center rather than this, even though, yeah, I think, that just justifies the upmark, so to speak, the slight jump in price, because it's a watch that's much more unique. I feel it has a little more of its own character. Coming back to Sotheby's London Fine Watches, an event that's going to take place on September 21st, with a lot of the usual suspects, a lot of the classic auction favorites, one of which greets us at lot number 5, and that's a Rolex Cosmograph Daytona with the Paul Newman exotic dial in the Panda configuration. Black chronograph registers against the white backdrop. Here, of course, again, you have the exotic dial, which means the chronograph registers have those stylized Art Deco numerals, screw-down pushers, bakelite inserts, that timeless design element, which is now appropriated in the new line of Daytonas that are introduced for the 60th anniversary of the design. Remember now, the bezels are inserted two matching rings made of the same metal as the case for the line of which 126 500 LN forms the backbone. This is stainless steel Rolex Cosmograph Daytona reference 6263 with that recognizable Paul Newman exotic dial. The piece is in decent condition, even though obviously I have seen, and probably you have seen too, cases in much better condition. I mean, this piece seems to have seen more than one enthusiastic polishing session. It is presented with a generic Rolex box. And the piece has already attracted a number of bids at lot number 5. The pre-auction estimate was ranging between $250,000 to $500,000 in US dollars, and the bidding currently stands nearly at 300,000 in US dollars. Lot 5 for the Sotheby's London Fine Watches Auction, a Rolex Cosmograph Daytona, reference 6263 with the Paul Newman exotic dial. As you see, that seems to be the prime lot, the centerpiece of this auction, of this curation. Again, if you would like me to take a closer look, take a particular look at any of these watches, feel free to click this link. If I've skipped over anything, or if you want me to look ahead to any of the watches on this auction, please feel free to send in the lot number with a super chat, and I would be more than happy to look at the watch in some historical and horological detail. Two incentives from September 12th to October 12th. The full amount of every single super chat is going to be donated to UNICEF for children affected by the earthquake in Morocco and the flood in Libya. And the first and last super chat of every day gets a number to enter the raffle for one of these Seiko 5 Rowing Blazers 2022 collab watches, namely the one with the blue dial. Now we are looking at a customized version of the Tudor Black Bay. These are the Tudor Black Bays that were made for the RASP on the occasion of the Platinum Jubilee last year, when the late Queen celebrated the 70th. Was it the 70th? Okay, I'm experiencing a little bit of a brain fart. But anyway, this was made in 300 examples for the special unit of the Metropolitan Police, specifically the unit that is dedicated to the protection of the members of the royal family as well as the members of the parliament. RASP stands for Royalty and Specialist Protection. And these watches were made to celebrate the Jubilee last year in 300 examples because it has Queen Elizabeth's own logo. Because it has RASP's own logo that features a Tudor rose with a crown resting above it at 6 o'clock. I think it is particularly interesting to see it as on a Tudor watch, right? Some people want the Tudor rose to be back on the dial of a Tudor watch, and there you have it. This special edition has it all. The case number is also engraved on the back with the royal cipher of Queen Elizabeth Regina, the second Platinum Jubilee 2022, number 2 out of 300. Apparently, the person who consigned this watch also has number 1, which they kept. And this watch also comes with a number of um, other memorabilia, since the consigner apparently works with Ukrainian combat medics. 50% of the proceeds of this particular watch will go to providing vehicles to support medical response units in the war in Ukraine. That's very interesting. The lot contains a bracelet given to the consigner by the Ukrainian military HQ in Kiev. The bracelet is made from the last pre-war batch of steel manufactured at the Azovstal plant, which was heavily fought over and defended for 86 days by the Ukrainian military in the siege of Mariupol before being ordered to surrender. The watch is also accompanied by a coin, flag, and patches from the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, who have been covered heavily in the media. Very interesting. I have absolutely nothing to say about what accompanies the watch. I think the watch is very interesting. I'm a huge fan of these customized black bays, but the Platinum Jubilee one is my absolute favorite because it brings the Tudor rose back to the dial. And I've covered these watches before on the channel. So if you want to take a look, I am most certainly going to send the link. In the chats. Some of these pieces were sold for record-breaking prices. Others sold for minimal premiums. This was my coverage of Sotheby's coronation sale back from May. Where an example of this watch was offered as well, along with an interesting Breitling Super Ocean Heritage that was made for the same unit, again on the occasion of the Platinum Jubilee. And I've also covered some of these watches on my Instagram. I cover a lot of interesting vintage pieces and very eye-catching contemporary high horology pieces as well on my Instagram. So if you do want to check it out, please feel free to follow me on Instagram as well. .548 Vikings. I have to say neither. I have to be brutally honest. I'm not a fan of the Air King in its current design. That Bloodhound dashboard design, I find it kind of like a dog's breakfast. It's just there's too much on the dial. I don't find it attractive. The new case and the 05, the double digit for the 05, that doesn't fix anything for me. You know, adding more to the dial that's already too crowded, you know, it's neither here nor there for me. I would say neither one. I'm not a fan of the Air King. This is Rolex Submariner 5513, famously with the 369 with the Explorer dial. These models are quite limited in number, but also as a niche, they have their own fans, so to speak, because at the end of the day, um, Submariners with Explorer dials bring together two iconic Rolex tool watch designs and meld it into one coherent piece. Um, of course, this particular version also has many of the other abiding design details of the classic diver watch, which give it a very distinct balance. The two lines of writing and the Arabic numerals on the quarters with the triangle at 12 give the dial a very, very beautiful and pure minimalistic look. This piece also comes with the original product literature, the presentation box, as well as its outer packaging, a few photos of the owner wearing the watch. I don't appreciate this one. Let's skip that very quickly. Um, but here, that's more like it. The pieces from the mid 60s, more or less. With the period correct riveted oyster bracelets, nicely patinated gloss gilt dial, already quite desirable in that form. But as I mentioned, the 369 dials or the Explorer dials are even more rare as opposed to the standard Submariner dial with the usual um, round baton and triangle indices. The piece comes with its original accessories, including its guarantee. And again, 4 photos of the original owner wearing the watch, which goes to establish the provenance. This is the so-called underline dial. As you can see, there's a slight underline under the Oyster Perpetual, which signifies the transition from radium to tritium as the luminous material on the dials. Beautifully aged gilt gloss dial in the Explorer style, and the gilt brass hands as well, showing the signs of their aging, which adds nothing but charm to this classic piece. um, hey, I mean, look, man, you're absolutely right, but you have to realize that those mid-century Rolex bracelets are absolutely shots. Not only the end link, every single link. So they need serious restoration. Um, it doesn't cost exorbitant amounts of money, but you do have to invest a little bit into it, like a few $100 with an expert, and it's worth it. I would rather get a shot bracelet with the watch that belongs to that watch, that's at least period correct, than not get anything at all. Because then you have to hunt for a bracelet, and especially ones in good condition that don't need restoration could cost as much as $5,000 or more. So, you know, I'd rather get a shot bracelet, send it to Michael Young in Hong Kong, get it sometime next year by now, I guess. Pay maybe, $300, $400 and be done with it. There's nothing they cannot do. I can tell you, I can vouch for the quality of that work. Lot number 7, with an estimated value that ranges roughly between 125,000 to 187,000 US dollars or more for this Explorer Dial Submariner reference 5513 at lot number 7. Man, I didn't do a lot of shows this last week, and it's been hitting my jaw. I'm talking too much today, but anyway, guys, keep them coming. Keep the questions coming. Keep the super chats coming. Those always help. And as you guys know, this in this period, September 12th to October 12th, it is actually helping the children of Morocco and Libya rather than me. We have done something similar for the victims of and survivors of the earthquake in Syria and Turkey. And thankfully, we'll do something else this time around as well for the survivors of the flood in Libya and the earthquake in Morocco before the full amount of super chats for from September 12th to October 12th are going to be donated to the UNICEF. You're looking at lot number 10. We have looked at lot number 2, a salmon dial, a pink gold dial version of this piece in platinum. But of course, that was 527p. This is 5271p, which signifies the baguette cut diamonds that are set on the bezel and on the lugs. Again, what we have is that stunning 41 millimeter platinum case with the spider lugs, with that stepped design, black dial, which actually looks quite stunning as well, even though I'm a huge fan of salmon dials. The in-house CH29 535 PSQ perpetual calendar chronograph movement, which replaced in that transition from 5970 to 5270 the Nouvelle Lemania base. It's not pictured, but the platinum déployant clasp that is presented with this watch also has a Calatrava cross, which is diamond set itself. Beautiful detail. The piece comes as a full set, which means that not only does it have its certificate of origin, original presentation case with the travel packaging, but also the setting pin, product literature, the additional solid platinum case back if you want that extra heft, uh, the numbered hang tag, the leather bifold wallet to hold the documents, and an additional travel pouch. A beautiful set for this 5271P Patek Philippe Perpetual Calendar Chronograph in a 41 millimeter platinum case, black dial, and the bezel and the lugs are set with baguette cut diamonds. And the pre-auction estimate for this piece is somewhere between $187,000 to roughly 375,000 US dollars. The piece is set with 80 diamonds weighing approximately 4.84 carats. Lot number 11 is reference 25654BA. This is the Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar in white gold with a champagne dial. Beautiful blue details. Of course, this is a classic 39 millimeter piece. Having more or less the same dimensions as the Royal Oak Jumbo with an ultra thin perpetual calendar movement. Beautiful balanced look with 3 subdials in combination with the moon phase indicator at 6 o'clock. The calendrical indications have heat blued hands, which also coordinate beautifully with the night sky of the moon phase indicator at 6 o'clock. The baton hands make the piece a little more elegant compared to the sportier execution of luminous hands for the Jumbo and for many other versions of the Royal Oak. And I think they also help to for an easier read. They also facilitate an easier reading of the calendar functions since they are much slimmer. They impede your vision a little less. This is once again the 25654BA, the Royal Oak Quintième Perpétuel, the Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar in 18 karat yellow gold, champagne dial from mid 80s. In the classic early iteration of the perpetual calendar module that does not have a leap year indicator, and that I personally prefer because of its balanced look. Nowadays, of course, AP has beautiful perpetual calendars for the Royal Oak that come with a larger 41 millimeter case. Um, they have leap year indicator. They have the weekly calendar that is indicated with a centrally deployed hand on the rejo. There's just too much going on the dial, and I love those watches. Don't take me wrong, but sometimes I feel like the piece ends up being too crowded on the dial of the watch, and you have a very different kind of elegance and purity when it comes to these early to mid 80s pieces in Royal Oak Perpetual calendars. This is such an example at lot number 11. The perpetual calendar in 18 karat yellow gold, reference 25654. Pre-auction estimate, the pre-auction estimate is $84,425 to $125,000, roughly speaking. That was lot number 11. Another one of the usual suspects at lot number 13. This is the 5711 line 1A, the modern stainless steel Nautilus Jumbo that is now discontinued, replaced by reference 5811, which so far only exists in white gold. Patek did something quite similar with the reference 3711G, which marked the return of the jumbo sizing into the lineup. And that had an existence for about 3 years, I think, in the catalog. So who knows? I think Patek might actually hold out until the 50th anniversary, I think, to release a new stainless steel Nautilus. I think they might just wait for 2026. They might not. I don't know. I you know, I just make educated guesses, guys. I don't have any insider information. I'm nobody's prince. No one feeds me anything, for better or worse, which means that I am at your service, that I am at your behest, and I can express my opinions freely. So far, so good. And here is the set that comprises this lot number 13. With a pre-auction estimate roughly between $75,000 to $125,000 in US dollars. We have about 30 more minutes to 30 more minutes to go. Please hit the like button. Take a look at this customized Black Bay, and I'll be right back. Another drink of water. The last break before midnight, I think. What does this mean? 548 Vikings. Thank you. 199. Another $1.99. Thank you so much. Hey, so far so good. We almost have $14 for the kids. So that's great. Archie is hungry. What does that mean? Please explain. Archie is always hungry because he's a big boy. He's a big boy. He loves eating. Um, some of my favorite classic Archie Luxury episodes actually involve him stuffing his face with pizza, ice cream, sneaking pizza into a weight loss facility, to put it in a PC way. I think he called it something else. Yeah, I kind of miss Archie. I saw this London based um, watch and lifestyle company, Boulang and Sons, um, have a marketing campaign where they were pairing Rolex watches with LV, with Louis Vuitton briefcases. It's incredible, really. I mean, it's Archie Luxury. Archie Luxury did mukbang before other YouTubers made millions from it. Archie Luxury was the first to combine Rolex and Patek with Louis Vuitton vintage briefcases and luggage, but others eat from it. It's you know, it's a shame. It's a shame. It is a shame because Archie Luxury, as a brand, as a personality, we cherish a lot. It means a lot, but it is being wasted. It is being wasted indeed. Sad, very sad. Okay, we were looking at another customized Black Bay with the reference 79230N this time. This is a custom version made for Ed Sheeran's Divide tour, which has the division symbol in that soft blue at 6 o'clock, gifted to the staff of the tour by Ed Sheeran himself, apparently. It's believed to be made in about 80 pieces. Engraved also on the case back, Divide Tour. Thank you for all your hard work on this tour. Love, Ed X, I guess. Kiss. That must be. And here's the piece presented with its box papers, the original receipt, and the outer packaging as well. Sorry about that amateur moment. All right, if you have not hit the like button, please upvote the stream. It helps immensely. Again, a very small channel still, so every little bit helps. Share the videos, contribute in any way you can. The super chats are all being donated from September 12th to October 12th, but you can always sign up for a membership. And of course, the other methods are indicated in the video description, and I'm gonna pin the links in the chat as well. But again, just clicking the upvote button already helps a great deal. Spreading the word about the channel, bringing in other collectors to the community also helps. So I appreciate everything that you do to help me to support this channel. This is the customized Black Bay reference 79-30N for Ed Sheeran's Divide Tour from around 2019. The piece had a pre-auction estimate of roughly $15,000 to $22,400 or more, and the current bid is right around 15,000 in US dollars. That was lot number 14. Oh, where did it go? All right. We are looking at the Fine Watches auction by Sotheby's London, which is going to take place next week on Wednesday, September 21st. If you have any questions, if you want me to take a closer look at any of these lots that I skipped over that I might not get to tonight, feel free to send in the lot number with a super chat, and I would be more than happy to take a look at you once again. Take a look at it for you once again. Tonight's super chats, in fact, all super chats until October 12th are going to be donated to UNICEF for those who were affected by the earthquake in Morocco and the floods in Libya. You're looking at the 5370. This is the Patek Philippe split seconds chronograph in a platinum case, 41 millimeters. This is a very modern watch in terms of its build, but the aesthetic is decidedly vintage inspired, especially taking some cues after the classic reference 1436 with the applied Breguet numerals, with the cabochon style lugs. And you will realize that the dial is not just any simple black dial. This is actually a Grand Feu enamel. And you may or may not know that black is one of the hardest colors to achieve through that process, perhaps because it needs to be more perfect than any other color, since it eats up all the light, right? Since it needs to be just perfect that way. Leaf styled hands that are actually luminous. And of course, you have that rattrapante pusher integrated onto the crown. Classic 2 registers. Between 3 and 4, you have the 30-minute totalizer, and between 8 and 9, you have the continuous running seconds. The tachymeter is imprinted on the periphery of the dial. As you can see, the black enamel dial is signed right under that applied Breguet numeral at 6 as MI, meaning enamel, French for enamel. This is lot number 15. For the 5370P, the Patek split-second chronograph in a modern 41 millimeter platinum case. Beautiful movements with even a black polished cap on the column wheel, as you can see right here. Signature Patek. I'm not sure how I feel about this particular leather strap chosen for presentation, but that's neither here nor there. This piece has a pre-auction estimate of roughly between $150,000 to $224,000 in US dollars or more. That was lot number 15. We're looking at lot number 27 for a Patek Philippe reference 3748. This is the model known as Ellipse d'Or, the golden ellipse, which takes its name actually after the design that follows the golden ratio, so to speak, right, which is an aesthetic principle that is derived or that is traced back to ancient Greek architecture, and that has been carried over into a number of early modern and modern designs as well. This piece happens to be also executed in 18 karat yellow gold. Hand-wound movements. The dimensions of the case are pretty contemporary as well, not too small, but also not too large. 32 millimeter by 47 millimeter on the leather strap with the matching yellow gold Patek Philippe buckle, and a brown a brown dial. I want to say it's actually like bronze because it's a very warm shade. The applied multifaceted baton indices have actually been oxidized over time. I don't mind it, but it's something to keep an eye on. It's something to note. I think it makes the watch look very charming, but for you, it might be a deal breaker. So it's something that we need to note. Again, I think the Ellipse, as it stands in the lineup currently, it's a little too large. I like these. I like these vintage versions of the piece a little more. For me, the sweet spot um, really is the. I want to make sure to get this right. The 3738, reference 3738 is the sweet spot for me. I think the sizing is just right on those. The newest references 5738 is too jumbo for my liking. Lot number 28 is a reduced size Nautilus 3800, executed in two-tone. This is decidedly 80s and even 90s version of the Nautilus. The case size and the proportions of the watch is shrunk, with the case size being 37 millimeter in diameter. Unlike the original Nautilus Jumbo, this is a three-hander, so it actually has a sweep center seconds hand, which might be a point of preference for some as well. Once again, some people swear by the Nautilus. I'm not a huge fan of the design, though I have to say the 3800 is, uh, for me, wears a little better. I feel like it's a little too wide as a watch for me in the original jumbo size. So I actually prefer the 3800s when it comes to the Nautilus. This is a very nice example, especially for those who like two-tone watches with the champagne dial, which blends beautifully and warmly with all the gold accents on the watch, which are on the bezel and, of course, on the polished center links of the bracelets. Solid case back, of course. This is not a modern Nautilus. It's from early 80s. And lot 28, which is a two-tone execution of the Patek Nautilus in reduced sized 3700 line 1. The piece has an estimate roughly between 25,000 to 50,000 in US dollars. You mean the drink? Go easy, man. um, yeah, don't drink too much. Well, as long as you're not drinking and driving and you're of legal age, you do what you want, have fun. You only live once. Why not? Lot 29 is a single red Submariner, one of the classic reference points of the modern watch design. This is reference 1680, which had conventionally, at least for the early part of its production, the Submariner writing in red. And this example from early 70s has just that. The piece comes with its matching Rolex Oyster bracelets. Probably one of the most iconic Submariners, even though it comes after the original design, which of course did not have a date window, which of course did not have a date indicator. Perhaps the red sub is even more recognizable due to the Cyclops style magnifier on its date indicator on the crystal. A very interesting and certainly meaningful chapter in the history of the modern dive watch. This is a nicely preserved example, worn but not necessarily abused. With a folded link bracelet, which is period correct for the early 70s. This is lot number 29 with a pre-auction estimate roughly between $15,000 to $22,400 and more. It was Lord Hellespont V. And Mike the Snake, I recall Mike the Snake as well. I almost forgot. And thank you for your kind words, man. I like it. And Archie Luxury was my gateway. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. I feel like, in the live stream space, at least, Archie Luxury was pretty much everyone's gateway. And I'm very, very proud of that. I don't deny that. But I have moved on. But more importantly, they have moved on. And, they have helped and supported all kinds of different channels, but not me. Poor little me. Lot number 30 is, speaking of reduced sized versions of iconic 70s designs, of course, the OG Jarajanta design is the Royal Oak from 1972. The Royal Oak similarly evolved in reduced sized versions. 4100 is an important reference for that. For many, 14790 is the iconic reduced sized reference with a 36 millimeter case on the integrated bracelet. 14800 is basically the leather strap version of it. It's a case that is a slightly different design, and I don't think it can be actually retrofitted with a bracelet. And this is a version that has a so-called tropical dial with the original Petite Tapisserie somehow sun burnt or baked to expose these gilt tones of brass, which frankly is very exciting, very interesting, even though not always preferable. As you guys know, the hexagonal bolts on the octagonal bracelets are always in white gold, which when it starts taking on the patina has this nice contrast against the grain brushed surface of that stainless steel octagonal bezel. And in this case, it also plays along wonderfully with the gilt tones of that tropical dial as well. I think the 14800 is a cool watch. Not sure if I would go after an example like this, even if the pricing is attractive. Um, and it indeed is in this case. Lot 30 is estimated at 10,000 to 15,000 in US dollars. Once again, this is a reduced size, 36 millimeters, made to be worn on a leather strap. And as you can see, it has a different self-winding movement. So it does have the sweep center seconds, unlike the original Royal Oak Jumbo, unlike the original Nautilus Jumbo, unlike the original Vacheron Constantin 222, all of which were based on the, pardon me, ultra thin JLC 920 self-winding calibers, which to this day, having been first made in late 60s, still retain the title of being the thinnest self-winding movement in the entire world with a full rotor, as opposed to a micro rotor, of course, because with micro rotors, you can actually get much thinner. All right, we have time for maybe two more watches. Um, let's go with two more pieces. Let's look at this interesting Explorer reference. Um, this is actually, you might say, it is an Air King reference, but some examples of the Rolex reference 5500 are actually branded Explorer with precision at 6 o'clock and with the 369 dial. The case is right around 34 millimeters in diameter, fitted with a folded link oyster bracelet here, as you can see. This is one of the rare, but not ultimately very hyped up or extremely desired piece. It is very rare, and I think sometimes people fit any old Air King case with one of those Explorer dials to sell it, as that rare reference. So unless you know what you're getting, unless you really have your serial number ranges and everything in line, and unless you are particularly smitten with this reference of like a junior explorer, I wouldn't recommend going after them, but this looks to be an interesting example at lot 31 on this fine watches auction by Sotheby's London, which is going to take place next week, Thursday, in London, of course. And this piece has an estimated value of roughly 7,500 to 12,500 in US dollars. Finally, the last watch of today. So probably Jake Brooks and 548 Vikings are getting the entries to the raffle today. JB for being the first, and one of the two super chats of 548 Vikings being the last super chat of today. Again, all the entire amount of super chats from today until October 12th are going to be donated to UNICEF to benefit the survivors, especially the children of the earthquake in Morocco and of the floods in Libya. And first and last super chats of every live stream from now until October 12th are going to be entered into the raffle with their unique numbers into which are going to be drawn on a live stream with the Google number generator, Google random number generator, after October 12th. And that is going to be for a Rowing Blazers Seiko 5 collaboration watch from 2022 with the blue dial. You can get as many numbers as you want. So if you have the last super chat of today, you can be the first super chat of tomorrow, and you can get both number 2 and number 3, vice versa, and any permutation. And again, the entire amounts of the super chats are going for that good cause. My handle was, I'm writing it now into the chats for 548 Vikings, Lord Hellespont the Fifth. Mr. French Fries Monster, you missed the best part of the Royal Oak with the bracelets that on that leather configuration looks like a steampunk dress watch. I kind of like that aspect of it, but again, it has to be part of a larger Royal Oak collection. I wouldn't want my only Royal Oak to be a 14800, if you know what I mean. "548 says, I wore a Tissel to ward off robbers at a car race recently. It was an Explorer lookalike." Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, the final watch of today is going to be lot 33. This is the Nautilus Moonphase 5712 line 1A-001. It's the Nautilus with the micro rotor movement. It's the Nautilus with the moon phase indicator. It's the Nautilus with the asymmetric dial. Of course, some will say the Nautilus Comet, the 3710 with the power reserve indicator, is the first complicated Nautilus. I have to say that's a pretty weak argument. I mean, is a power reserve indicator really a complication? You can't say anything beyond, the hour, minutes, and seconds is already a complication. I get it. For me, the 3712, which was the ancestor of the watch you are looking at, and which was in production for around a year, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I think that is the first complicated Nautilus, but That's minor bickering. That's a small argument. It does not, I think, in any way undermine the a niche interest and perhaps the cult following of 5712, which you might know is actually a more slender watch than the modern jumbo. I believe this one is around 8.5 in thickness, whereas the jumbo is 8.6. And that is due to the microrotor movement, of course, which comes from the lineage of caliber 240, designed by Gérard Beret, who was recruited from Universal Genève to Patek Philippe, and who was the brains behind the first microrotor movement as conceived by the Genevan watchmakers. Of course, the microrotor movement, as previously mentioned, allows a more slender profile since you are sinking the rotor to the same level as the bridge plates of the movement. I think aesthetically, it's also quite fascinating too when it's well executed, because of course it gives you a more impeded look of the movement. If you're an exhibition case back, that's just great. This particular example of the watch comes from a few years ago, from around 2020. It comes with its box and papers, as well as product literature, leather bifold wallet, retail hang tag, not to mention the presentation case. Here's that beautiful slender profile of the watch. And here is once again the microrotor movement, the caliber 240, as you can glimpse into from the exhibition case back. 5712 line 1A-001, all in stainless steel with the ribbed gradient blue dial, asymmetrically laid out with the power reserve indicator, with the pointer dates that envelops the aperture for the moon phase indicator, and the subsidiary dial for small seconds placed off center between 4 and 5 o'clock. This is the Patek Philippe Nautilus moon phase at lot number 33, with a pre-auction estimate that ranges from 62,250 to almost 100,000 in US dollars. Guys, I will get back to this in the next live stream. We'll continue discussing watches from Sotheby's fine watches, Sotheby's London fine watches. I am, as you can tell, extremely tired, so I'll have to cut it right here. I was gonna say I'll cut it short, but we are almost at the 4-hour mark again. You know, I'm the hardest working person in this space, and I will be I will be working even harder starting May. I mean, again, you'll see. Just hit the like button before you take off. Thank you again for all these generous super chats. Jake Brooks and 548 Vikings 2 times. Jake Brooks as number one and 548 Vikings as number two are entered into the raffle to win that Seiko 5 Rowing Blazers Blue Dial watch for collaboration. Um, and all these super chats. So 13, yeah, $14. That is as a full amount so far going to UNICEF. You'll find further details of our fundraising campaign as well as the raffle on the community tab. But this is going to go until October 12th. So all of you will get a shot at it. All of you will get the chance, I'm sure, to enter the raffle as long as you contribute, as long as you super chat. If you want to support the channel, again, I do this all alone. I don't have any sponsors. You know, Steel Buffalo is just my second home. They open their shop to me for about 2 hours every Sunday, and we have a nice conversation with friends, smoking cigars, and just talking about nothing and everything about life, about men's issues, about the challenges we face in our personal struggles, in our professional life. I really like these conversations. Let me send the playlist into the chat if you would like to watch. These are roughly 1 hour, 1 hour 30. So very digestible. Just conversations among friends. So I'm sure you will enjoy it. You'll find it very accessible, um, and you can even share it with people who don't care about watches, because we barely talk about watches in those conversations, in those podcasts. But I'm sure you will have a lot of fun. All of that being said, yes, if you want to contribute, if you want to support the channel um, monetarily, the links are in the chat pinned, and they're also included in the video descriptions. The super chats until October 12th are going to go to UNICEF in their full amount. So, with that being said, um, let's go. Let's get this ball rolling. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you again for your support and presence. And please don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't until now. When you are on your way out, stay safe, stay healthy, wear your watches, and enjoy them. Love you all. I'll see you in the next one.